Get ready because there's more chills on the way. Ratman's Notebooks read through continues.
I look forward to going home in the evenings, now far more than I ever did when Mother was alive. I open the front door with my latch key and close it carefully behind me. I hang up my coat and hat. I go to the cellar door, open it a little, and peep in. There is Socrates waiting for me on the top step. "Out you come," I say, and out he does come, into the hall. I close the door after him. None of the other rats is allowed into the house. They have the choice of staying in the cellar or going out through the grating into the garden. They stay in the cellar. Nothing I can do will persuade them to go out. I keep buying wheat. I can't afford it, but so long as I can actually lay my hands on money, I haven't the strength of mind to drive them out by starvation. Socrates is allowed to stay in the house from the time I come in at night till the time I leave for work in the morning. In the mornings, just before I leave, I put him back through the cellar door, and he spends the day with the other rats. The rest of the time he is with me, and I share everything with him, even my bed. He is perfectly clean. He is house trained, that is. I had no difficulty in training him. The first evening I let him into the house, he left droppings all over the place. But each time I saw him do something, I picked it up with a piece of stiff paper and put it into an old frying pan that was in the kitchen. Very soon, he saw what I was up to, and by the end of the evening, when he had anything to do, he hopped into the frying pan and did it there. The advantage of the frying pan is that it's so easy to carry around. From time to time, I either tip it out of the window or into the WC, whichever is most handy. That first night, when bedtime came, I didn't like to put Socrates down in the cellar. It seemed mean somehow, so I got a big cardboard box that had come from the grocer's and a bit of an old blanket. I put the bit of blanket in the box, and the box on the floor of my bedroom with the frying pan beside it in case Socrates wanted to do anything in the night. When I awoke in the morning, I found he was on the bed under the quilt, pressed up close against me for warmth.
Whoa. Is it a bee or something? Jeez.
Now he often comes right into bed with me. At first I was frightened that I might roll over on top of him, but he always manages to keep out of the way. On warm nights, he sleeps on my pillow. The work in the office is increasing. I don't know if the turnover has increased very much, but certainly the number of orders has. This means more work for everyone, particularly me. I had to work late 3 nights last week. Anyone working late in our office is entitled to half a crown for tea money. So I paid myself half a crown each of the nights I worked late and entered the payments in the cash book. Jones looks at the cash book every morning. On Friday morning, he said to me, "Is all this working late really necessary?" I said, "I can't keep up otherwise. There's an awful lot more to do." Jones said, "You should be able to keep up. It's all a matter of efficiency. In future, I want the day's work done in the day. We can't afford to be paying out tea money the whole time. It's not economical." All he really wants is to stop me getting 7 and 6 extra a week. He knows very well that when I'm going to work late, I bring in sandwiches and don't actually spend any money extra in having tea. So now I'll simply have to go on working late without charging tea money. Long ago, when Jones was no more than one of the men in the warehouse, I heard another man say he was a mean bastard. I don't know if he really is a bastard or not, but he certainly is mean. We've now got a girl in the cash office. She started today. Who ever heard of a girl in the cash office before? I'm not sure what Jones is up to. He says she's there to help all round and lighten the work. But with Jones, you never know. Perhaps he's really come to the conclusion that I'm inefficient, or alternatively, that a girl would be cheaper. Well, I don't know whether you would call me efficient. I always thought I was pretty quick with a pen, and I know I make very few mistakes. At the same time, I don't think I look efficient. I mean, I've somehow got to look old-fashioned. I don't know quite why this is, because you'd still call me almost a young man. I know this: the work I send out is a lot more reliable than what comes out of other places. If you saw the invoices that come into us nowadays, half of them extended wrong, and as for the statements, as often as not, there's something on them intended for another firm altogether. It's all these girls. They're thinking of what they call dates the whole time. Their minds are never on their work. And now we've got one. Mind you, we always had girls to do the typing, even in Father's Day. But that's quite a different thing from getting them mixed up with the work of the cash office. The new girl has now settled into a regular job. She checks all the invoices before they are allowed to go out. In the old days, all the invoices were written by the invoice clerk and checked by the dispatch clerk. Then Jones altered the system so that there was only one clerk in the dispatch office. But of course the new system meant more mistakes. Whether he's got in the girl to put this right or with the idea of replacing me, I'm not sure. At any rate, for the first fortnight she was here, she was what was called being trained, which meant that she was shown all the work in the office, particularly my work. I couldn't refuse to show her my work when I was ordered to do so by the bookkeeper, who had been ordered by Jones. But I didn't show her more than I could help. I told her I hadn't time to explain things, and she'd just have to watch. In fact, I really didn't have time, even with working late. She spent a week sitting beside me, watching what I did. At the end of it, she said I had been very helpful. In fact, she seems a very nice girl, and I would have got to like her if I hadn't kept reminding myself the whole time that she was trying to steal my job. As it was, we became quite friendly in a superficial fashion. The last day, I said to her with a touch of irony, "Well, I suppose you could do my job now as well as I can, or perhaps better." "Goodness, no," she exclaimed. "I just don't know how you manage. I'd be here all night and still not finished." I didn't tell her that I'm often here till 11 o'clock. She might think then that perhaps I wasn't so much more efficient than she is after all. As it is, I think she must have told Jones and or the bookkeeper that I am very efficient indeed. The bookkeeper ought to know already that I am at least moderately efficient, but perhaps he himself feels under pressure from Jones. For all he knows, he may be the next. One of these days, Jones may want to replace him. Anyhow, the girl has now got the regular job of checking invoices, so the position seems to be held for the time being. The bookkeeper told me today that Jones's real idea in getting the girl was as a sort of insurance against a breakdown in the office routine. If the bookkeeper gets ill, or I get ill, or the dispatch clerk gets ill, the whole machinery of running the office is put out of order. The girl is intended as a sort of spare cog. I don't know whether to believe this or not. The bookkeeper has obviously swallowed it whole. Jones may even believe it himself in a sort of way. The thing about people who deceive is that their minds work in different compartments. They can have two contradictory theories in their head at once and speak according to one or the other, whichever suits the listener best. I think Jones has the idea that the whole office could be run by girls more cheaply than by men, but he's not sure yet how it would work out. So he's got this one girl as a kind of spare. Just what he said to the bookkeeper, in fact. He reckons one or other of us is bound to get ill sometime. The girl will then be shoved in as a stopgap. If she gets on all right, the person whom she's been stopgapping for will be due for the sack at the earliest opportunity. I thought of mentioning this idea to the bookkeeper and suggesting that we ought all to get together and arrange that if any one of us does get ill, the others will make sure that the girl is not able to carry on his work satisfactorily. I didn't dare to. The bookkeeper would be shocked. He is one of these old-fashioned persons who would cut his own throat if the boss told him to. I am beginning to get the odd impression that the girl likes me. As a rule, girls pay very little attention to me. With their quick feminine intuition, they recognize at once that I'm a bad bet, not worth wasting time on. Occasionally, I've felt that a girl was sorry for me, but that was as far as it ever went. This girl appears to respect me. She always speaks to me in a respectful way. Of course, it may all be part of a deep-laid plot to get my confidence. She is always offering to help me, and the way she does it, you would think she meant it. She said yesterday, "You know, you've far more to do than anyone else in the office. You really should let me help you. I haven't enough to keep me occupied." This was very tempting because it's true. The work keeps mounting and mounting. I worked late 4 nights last week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and it will be the same again this week. However, I refused. I did it as nicely as possible because I can't help liking her. I never work late on Friday nights. The reason is that on Fridays, Jones works late himself. He makes out new price lists for the travelers. So I look forward to Fridays, and of course the weekends. I don't really like work. I only work hard because I'm afraid of losing my livelihood. All the same, it's not hard work in itself I object to. What I hate is losing my free time. It's so cozy at home in the evenings since Mother died. From the moment I get in and open the door of the cellar, I have a feeling of complete contentment. Most of the time, I spend alone with Socrates. I don't really bother much about the other rats. I see to their food and comfort, of course, but I don't usually stay down in the cellar more than an hour or so, even on the nights when I'm not working late. All the same, their education is coming on, though of course, they're not up to Socrates' standard. Socrates, I do believe, understands every word I say. I think during the day, when I'm not there, he must teach the other rats. For instance, they can all now count up to 10, and I don't think they could do that from my teaching alone. There is one young rat that seems brighter than the others. Funnily enough, he isn't as definitely a furry tail as some. I suppose you would call him an intermediate type. I can't quite make out where he came from. I don't remember him being there when I moved the rats from the tool shed into the cellar. Of course, he might have been born in the cellar since the move, but I can't remember him as a baby rat or half grown, and he never seemed to belong to any particular family. Somehow, I feel that he is a son of Socrates, though I have no means of knowing. And I don't suppose Socrates has either. I am inclined to think he has made his own way in. I have given him the name of Solomon. It's because he's so clever, but even if the name hadn't been taken already, I would never have called him Socrates. Solomon I look on as a crafty kind of name, while Socrates is good and wise. Most nights now, I get in so late and so tired that I have only time to feed the rats and go to bed. I wish I could take Socrates into the office with me. Then I could let him out after all the others have gone, to keep me company when I'm just there by myself. But it would mean keeping him shut up in a bag all day, and that wouldn't be fair. Not getting tea money has quite upset my budget. Tea money was sheer profit to me. I brought in a thermos flask of tea and a few slices of bread and margarine, which was just what I would have been having at home anyhow. I suppose you might say I have enough to live on. I would have if I sold the house and took a room somewhere, which is all that a solitary bachelor is supposed to need. Now I've got my bill for rates staring me in the face. It can be paid in 2 installments, but even one installment is going to take all the money I have left in the bank, plus nearly all my month's pay. I'm going to pay it though. I'll have to wait till the end of the month. I'm out of coal too, but fortunately, I've enough wheat to do for some time. I won't be the first person who's had to live on bread and water for a stretch, and the weather's hardly ever really cold before Christmas. I've had another of my ideas, not that it's going to make me any money. It's about bringing Socrates into the office. Next to the ladies' cloakroom, there's what we call the old book room. We used to put the old ledgers and day books into it when they got full up, because no one liked to throw them away in case they might be needed for something. Even before Father died, all the shelves were full up, and there were some books on the floor. Now it's never used, and no one ever even opens the door. Why not put Socrates in there? He could run about in perfect freedom all day without anyone being a penny the wiser. And then at night, I could bring him into the cash office with me. I'll have a look tomorrow before I do anything. Well, I had my look, and everything was even better than I imagined. The door was locked, but the key was in the lock, so I went in and had a look around. From any normal point of view, the room's jammed full, but that doesn't mean there's not still plenty of room for Socrates to run about as he likes. However, I wasn't going to take any chances. When I came out, I locked the door and put the key in my pocket. I made sure no one saw me doing this. Now I have waited a week, and no one has shown any interest in the book room. If anyone does, they're sure to come to me before trying to burst open the door, I'll say, I believe Father had a duplicate key for that at home. If you wait till tomorrow, I'll have a look and bring it in if it's there. That'll give me all the time I need to make sure Socrates is out of the way before they get in. Thank goodness I don't owe anything. That was one thing Mother insisted on after Father died. We never ran any bills, except for electricity and gas. That way you always know where you are. With electricity and gas, she worked out what they came to each quarter and put something aside each week in a special envelope. At the end of the quarter, there was always a little more than enough. I did the same at first, but I wasn't using enough electricity to justify the quarterly rental charge. Now I've got them to put in slot meters, and I must say I find them very satisfactory. I never have more than one light on at a time. If that goes out and I haven't a shilling in the house, I just have to do without till the next day. It's a bit awkward at times, but it does save money. Today I took Socrates into the office with me. I used Father's leather traveling bag. I slipped into the book room when nobody was looking and locked the door after me. Then I opened the bag and let him out. I put out some food for him. Immediately Socrates started to explore. I watched him for a minute or so. He seemed contented enough, and I decided it would be all right to leave him. I took the key out of the keyhole and peered through, listening at the same time. I could see no one and hear no one. I came out quickly and locked the door behind me. There was no one about. It was only 9:10. The girls don't come in till 5:30. After that, I knew I shouldn't have another chance to see Socrates and find out how he was getting on till lunchtime. In fact, I didn't see him at lunchtime. It appears that none of the girls goes home in the middle of the day. They bring sandwiches in with them and make tea in the ladies' room. All through the lunch hour, they were going in and out. The way our office is nowadays, you never know who is watching who. I felt if I was seen going in or out of the book room, Jones would hear about it in no time and start asking questions. The result of all this was that I didn't see Socrates again till everyone else had gone home. I went into the book room and called him. I called and called. Soon I began to get worried. I couldn't think what to do. How far could he have gone? Might he have set off to try to get home? What sort of chance would he have through streets thronged with traffic, or later, if he did get past those first hazards, in back streets inhabited by stray cats and vicious dogs? I had nearly given up hope when I found him curled up, asleep and almost invisible, in a corner of the traveling bag. For a moment, I wondered if he was dead. It occurred to me he might have been eating the leather off the back of the old books, and that the leather might be treated in some way which made it poisonous. But there was nothing wrong with him except that he was lonely and miserable. His coat was all ruffled and dull. When I stroked him for a little, his spirits returned to normal. He began to groom himself. Very soon he was sleek and shining as usual. I never noticed before what a big rat he has become. He never seems to have stopped growing. After that, I took him into the cash office, and he ran about there quite happily for 2 or 3 hours. In fact, till I was ready to go home. I don't think I'll take him into the office again. It wouldn't be kind, really. I didn't like giving up the idea of taking Socrates to the office. I tried to think of some safe way to do it without making him miserable. I decided he had been miserable just because he was lonely and perhaps frightened at the same time. If I took in another rat as well, that would stop him being lonely. If I go the proper way about it, I may also be able to stop him being frightened. For his companion, I have decided on Solomon. Ben Solomon is the rat I previously called Solomon. I don't know why I changed his name. It is almost as if he forced the new name on me. Today is Sunday. This morning, at about the time I would have been getting ready for church if Mother were still alive, I put Socrates and Ben Solomon in the traveling bag and caught a bus into the city. The city is very quiet on Sundays. There was no one at all in the street where our office is. I always carry with me Father's key of the office. It is one thing Jones has never tried to take away from me. If he did, I wouldn't be able to lock up when I work late. And if he asked about it and didn't take it away, he couldn't go on pretending not to know about my working late. So he would either have to stop me or let me take tea money again, and I don't think he really wants to do either. Anyhow, I let myself in, took the two rats down to the book room and released them. From time to time, I went back and peeped in. They both seemed perfectly happy. The reason I chose Ben Solomon is that I think he is the only rat who is Socrates' equal intellectually. In fact, I think he may be superior even to Socrates as regards intellect. But there is still something about him I don't like. I went home about 6. I got all my back work cleared up. I worked all the time just as if it had been a normal day. But the amount I got through surprised me. In the office during the day, I am kept back by constant interruptions, people wanting this and that. At nights, my rate of work is slowed down. I think just by the fact that I am tired. If I work an occasional Sunday in future, it will be as good as 3 nights, and I will be able to bring in as many rats as I can carry without fear of anyone finding out. Jones is getting in consultants. The girl heard about them from Jones's secretary, as he now calls the typist who does his letters. In Jones's world, a secretary is an essential to prestige as a car. But what are consultants? I asked the girl. She and I are now quite friendly. Oh, they come in and discover a business is being run all wrong. They work out economies and get in more staff to put them into effect. They find out nobody's any good but the office boy. They recommend he should be made managing director. Usually the firm goes bust after that. Meantime, the consultants will have moved on somewhere else. If it's like that, why do people ever get them in? Just it's the modern thing to do. Maybe they'll decide you and I should be directors. That'd be fun, wouldn't it? I realized she was joking. Of course, it went all round the office in no time, and everyone is feeling a bit jittery. The bookkeeper said, "You'll have to smarten yourself up now, young man. Going to be no more inefficiency round here." All the older men are taking that attitude, but secretly they're scared stiff. I suppose at heart no one is really completely confident. So far, the consultants don't appear actually to have started. They just come in from time to time and have talks with Jones in private. I don't know what to do about money. I thought again about writing to Uncle in Canada, but he never replies to letters anyway, and it might have the opposite effect to what I want. He might decide that I was shiftless and cut me out of his will, if I'm ever in it, so I just did nothing as usual. It is only now, 48 hours after the event, that I can write about it in any way calmly. The night before last, I was in desperation. I had only half a loaf of bread in the house and no money whatever. I could eat the bread myself and let the rats starve, or I could give them the bread and starve myself. Goodness knows we're all half starved as it is, or were. Things have now changed, for the time being at least. As they were then, I realized it didn't matter much who got the bread. We were all going to starve completely very soon. There would be no relief till the end of the month when my pittance is paid by the firm. Of course, I could have robbed the till. Borrowed a bit from the cash drawer is a nicer way to put it. I would have had no hesitation in doing this if I hadn't felt almost certain I would be found out. Jones has made a rule that the bookkeeper must make a surprise check on the cash at least 3 times a month. It's not that my cash has ever been out. I don't know if Jones even suspects me of anything. I think it's just part of the general nastiness that he calls efficiency. As I sat there sipping a glass of cold water and looking alternatively at the half loaf of bread and at Socrates, it occurred to me that a change had come over my moral outlook. I realized that if I could have stolen money from the firm without being found out, I would have. Nothing but fear or prudence kept me from being a criminal. This thought didn't make me ashamed in any way. On the contrary, I felt as if a door had suddenly been opened to me. It was as if in a game of golf I didn't need to count anymore the shots which my opponent didn't see. Then it struck me that possibly Jones had discovered this a long time ago, and hungry as I was, I laughed. Socrates looked up quite frightened. I don't often laugh. For some time, I couldn't think of how to take advantage of my new discovery. All sorts of grandiose, Grandiose, grandiose schemes for robbing banks and mail vans flitted through my mind. After 15 minutes or so, I became more practical. What I want now, I said to myself, is food for myself and the rats. Fortune can come later. All about me, there is food in plenty. My neighbors have food. The shops are full of food. All I have to think of is how to get possession of some without paying. The first thing that struck me was that if I could feed the rats, I could eat the half loaf myself. Of course, only a temporary solution, but an urgent temporary solution, was what I needed most. I thought immediately of Major Robinson. I don't know why. He is not quite my nearest neighbor, but he is often away, and more than once I have yielded to the temptation of helping myself from his garden. It's so easy to get into, and quite a lot of what he grows never gets used in any case. It's a pity to let it go to waste. The fact is, I know Major Robinson's garden, and I know the back of his house. Indeed, I have sometimes peered through the larder window. There are 2 windows really. From one, the glass has been removed and replaced by a fine wire mesh that not even a midge could squirm through. But it would be quite easy to knock a hole in it. My fist would probably do the trick, and there would be no noise, as there would be if I had to break glass. I could let the rats through the hole in the wire, and they could eat as much as they liked. If anyone did come, which would be unlikely if I chose my time right, what would he do if he found the larder filled with rats all eating away as fast as they could manage? Scream if it was a woman. Run for help or a stick if it was a man. And in the interval, I could get the rats out of the larder and sneak quietly away. Even a brave man might hesitate to tackle 49 rats with a stick. Nearly everyone is a little afraid of rats. I used to be till I learned how friendly they really are. Of course, Major Robinson, being a military man, ought to be brave, but military men nowadays think of strategy and tactics more than blind courage. Major Robinson would probably think it more correct strategically, 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 to call in the police or the fire brigade. Before doing anything, I decided to go and spy out the land. I put Socrates in one pocket of my waterproof and the half loaf of bread in the other. I was afraid if I left it, it mightn't be there when I came back. The rats have gnawed a hole in the cellar door, and though I try to persuade them to keep in the cellar, I never know that I won't find them in the house. I went straight down the road to the Robinsons'. It's built with its back to the road, and the vegetable garden is between the road and the house. There's nothing simpler than to nip in any dark night and help oneself to a cabbage, a few potatoes, or even some tomatoes out of the greenhouse. The trouble is that there hasn't been anything in the garden for the past month. Tonight it was reasonably dark and there was no light showing from the larder. I turned in at the gate without a qualm. I half saw, half heard Nap, the Major's dog, and put out my hand to give him a pat. I've always been on friendly terms with Nap. He usually stands beside me, wagging his tail when I'm taking things from the garden, but tonight he jumped up on me and began to bark in an absolute frenzy. I had quite forgotten about Socrates in my pocket till he began to wriggle about a little. "Down, Nap! Quiet, Nap!" I ordered, but it wasn't the slightest use. He is a biggish dog, a sort of mongrel, old English sheepdog. He made no attempt to bite me, but he was determined to get Socrates out of my pocket. Probably thought he was doing me a good turn. Imagine I didn't know I had a rat in my pocket. I wasn't so much afraid that he would get Socrates out. He's too clumsy for that. I was afraid that his continual jumping might injure Socrates. I was also afraid that the noise might bring out the Major to see what was wrong. So I gave up and began to make for home. I had to keep twisting and turning at the same time pushing Nap off. I was terribly tempted to kick him, but I didn't want to make any enemy of him. I knew I'd want to use the garden again sometime. Then the lights went on at the back of the Robinsons' house, and the next thing was the Major's authoritative, authoritative, authoritative military voice. "Nap! Nap! "Come home, sir, at once." "Go home," I whispered, giving him a sort of half kick. He yelped, and by a miracle, turned tail and went. I ran for home, on tiptoes, so as to make no noise. I heard the Major and Nap meet. "What's the matter, boy? What are you barking at? What's all the fuss?" I knew he would come strolling out to the gate to investigate. I raced up our own drive and in through the yard and the back door. I felt safe. I was quite sure the Major hadn't seen me. Of course, even if he had, he couldn't have done anything. I've as much right to be on the road as he has. All the same, he would have thought it strange. If Nap has started to jump up at me again, barking in that hysterical fashion, fancy calling a dog Napoleon, because that's what Nap's short for. The Major apparently has always been a great admirer of the Emperor, admires his strategy. Bit out of date, you'd think. Maybe that's why he only got to be a major. I mean, even in the army? I went out again in about 15 minutes. This time I left Socrates, though I still kept the lump of bread in my pocket. I didn't intend to try the Major's again, though by now Nap was probably safely shut in. That didn't say he wouldn't start barking away again, like mad, the moment I got near the house. But there are several other houses in our road, and then it suddenly struck me. A new grocer's shop has started up just opposite the end of our road. There's the shop in front, just a little back from the main road, and behind it there's a big store. The door between the shop and the store was open once. When I was in the shop and I got a glimpse of what was inside, it seemed to be just crammed with stuff, mostly food. Someone told me that the man must have more money than sense, starting a shop there and carrying such a stock. But I don't know. He seems to be getting on all right. I went down to the main road. The shop was shut, but there was a dim light shining through it. I realized it came from a little office near the back. Probably the grocer totting up his books to see how he was doing. I went round to the very back, quite easy because there's waste ground on either side. There's only one window at the back. It has iron bars across it, no glass. I heard that he had glass in it at first, but the local hooligans kept throwing stones through it, and he had to give up and put bars instead. The bars are too close for a hooligan to get through, but a rat could manage comfortably. There was no light in the store. I went back home for the rats. I put 25 rats in the bag I used when I went to do Jones's tires. I carried it down and left it at the back of the grocer's store, not just under the window, but a little way off in a bunch of nettles, where even if anyone did come along, it wouldn't be seen. "Quiet," I said. "I'll be back." I'd never left them like this before. I hoped it would be all right. I kept Socrates in my pocket. I didn't like to leave him in case anything went wrong. I went home and brought the rest in a suitcase. As soon as I got to the waste ground again, I opened the bag I'd left and found the rats all huddled together in the bottom. They hadn't tried to get out. Probably they were frightened. I took them all to the window and put them in through the bars, one by one. Socrates first to show the way. "Food," I told them. "Eat food." I said that to each one of them as I placed it on the window ledge between the bars. I don't suppose it took more than 2 or 3 minutes to put them all in. After that, I could see nothing. It was quite black inside the store. I had no idea what was going on. I wondered how long I should leave them. 1 hour? 2 hours? I ate some of the bread, but not much, because my mouth was dry and there was no water. I hid the bag and the suitcase in the nettles and went round to the front to look at my watch in the light from the shop. It was 9:10. I thought I might leave them till 11:10. By that time, I would want to go home to bed. Besides, I was afraid to leave them too long in case they all got tired of eating and went to sleep. I returned to the back and leaned against the wall under the window. I thought I was safe there. If I hung about in front, someone might notice me. Not that anyone could say anything. Still, you never know. After a bit, I went to the front again and had another look at my watch. 25 to 10. I was bored stiff. If only I could have seen the rats. All I knew was that there was an occasional rustling of paper, an occasional slight fistling noise. I had an electric torch at home. I wished I had brought it. I thought of going back for it. It would only mean leaving the rats for 10 or 15 minutes, and it would help to put in the time. And then something fell inside the store. It didn't make much noise. It might have been a packet of cornflakes falling from a shelf 4 or 5 feet from the ground. I wondered if the grocer would hear it and wonder, was the door between the shop and the store open or closed? Was the door of his little glass office open or closed? I didn't know. I hesitated. Should I call the rats back quickly before there was any chance of discovery? Or was I being too jittery? The light went on in the store. At the same time, there was quite a loud noise. I don't know what sort of noise. I think it was the noise of the grocer flinging open the door. I expect he'd try to open the door and switch on the light almost simultaneously, with the idea of surprising the burglars. I am sure he had no idea what sort of burglars were there. I had to stand on tiptoes to see through the window. At first, I didn't see the grocer or any rats. I suppose my eyes were dazzled. Then I saw everything. The store was bigger than I had imagined. The grocer was standing in the doorway, quite still, with his eyes wide open. The rats were quite close to him. They were all looking at him, as surprised as he was, stopped in the middle of whatever they'd been doing. Some had been crawling over a side of bacon, some digging a hole in a cheese, others were surrounded by a sea of cornflakes. It was wonderful how much they had done in so short a time. The grocer slammed the door. He didn't switch off the light. What will he do now? I wondered. I called the rats. Socrates! All of you! Quick! Here! Out! Time to go home! They came crowding through the bars, jostling each other, the ones at the back shoving against the ones in front. I snatched Socrates, put him in my pocket, and dashed to the bunch of nettles for my bag and suitcase. I should have done that, of course, before I called. I dropped the case a yard or two from the window and began to open the bag so that they could jump straight into it. There was a squeal from beneath my feet, and another. I was treading on rats. Those who had got to the window first had been pushed off of the ledge by the ones behind. The ground was covered with rats. I knelt down and began to grab them, thrusting them into the bag as quickly as I could. But I remembered to count. I couldn't even see them. I groveled about on the ground, and whenever I could feel a rat, I caught it and put it in. When I had 24 in the bag, I closed it and began on the case. There were some still on the window ledge. I could see them peering down at me. In fact, they were the only ones I could see. I took them last. 45, 46, 47, 48. There must be one missing. I got down on the ground again and began to grovel. Was one of the rats I had stood on injured, perhaps killed? Suddenly, I remembered. I hadn't counted Socrates. I had them all. Now what? Where had the grocer gone? Was he in his little office telephoning the police? No, you wouldn't telephone the police for rats. What would you do? I thought I had better investigate before I took any to precipitate action. If the grocer was out at the front, waiting for the police or the fire brigade, he would think it funny if he met me coming from behind his store carrying a suitcase in one hand and a leather traveling bag in the other. So I investigated, first putting the case and the bag back among the nettles. The light was still on in the shop, but I could see no sign of the grocer. Was he still in the office? There was a man's hat there, but it didn't move. Perhaps he was sitting down at the telephone. The front door was open. I couldn't remember if it had been opened before or not. I didn't think so. Probably he had rushed out, not bothering to shut it. The rats must have frightened him. He hadn't even liked to wait to telephone. The hat must be empty, stuck on top of a filing cabinet or something. There was an easy way to find out. Walk in. If there was someone in the hat, tell them I had noticed the door open and wanted a pack of cigarettes. How's he to know I've given up smoking? And what business is it of his anyhow? If he does offer me cigarettes, it's time enough to discover I've no money with me and say I'm sorry for troubling him. So I did walk in. I searched the shop. There was no one there. The hat was empty. It was hanging on a peg, as a matter of fact. But there were 3 bundles, each containing 100 one-pound notes, lying on a little table where he had been working. I took Socrates out of my pocket and put him on the table. I pointed at one of the bundles of notes. "Eat," I said. He took a nibble and didn't like it. "Eat," I said again. This time he took a little more. The bundle now had a nibbled look. "All right," I told him and put him back in my pocket. I looked round. No sign of the grocer coming back. I went to the door of the store and using my handkerchief to turn the handle, opened it slightly. Oh, I haven't read detective stories for nothing. I went back to the office. Still no sign of anybody. I picked up the 2 unnibbled bundles of notes, shoved them into my pocket, not the one where Socrates was, and ran. A bus went by without stopping, and immediately afterwards 2 cars. I turned my back to the road. You never know who may recognize you. Where on earth had the grocer gone? Could I trust him to stay away another few minutes? I decided to chance it. I dodged round behind the store again and picked my suitcase and bag from among the nettles. It was less chancy taking them both at once than coming back when the fire brigade and police might be all over the place. Fortune favors the bold. I got home without meeting a soul. And that is the stopping point for now, right there. Till the next one.